My name is Susan Downs. This is the Silicon Valley Health Institute. We are a nonprofit organization where we have monthly Zoom meetings with the goal of educating folks on how to be healthy and reach optimal health. We serve as a community. We help each other out. We used to have a forum where you can ask questions, and we have top-notch speakers such as we have today. You put our videos online, and we've got about 20 years of videos that are online. Health and experts such as Dale Bredesen, Dietrich Klinghardt, and all the real experts. But unfortunately, censorship is taking its toll. But today we've got something super, super interesting. I mean, I've had kyphosis, scoliosis my whole life, and I went to a British osteopath and other chiropractors. They try to pound it down, and that's the worst thing you can do for it. So this, I mean, is very bad for your health, because as I understand it, what happens is, normally you're leaning forward and then your body will compensate, like thrusting your pelvis out, and you keep doing all these realignments. And each time you form an adhesion, meningeal adhesion, which kind of line the, in certain areas, and then you get stuck in a bad area. And if I hadn't found the ABCs, and I found through a woman, Dr. Downing in the UK, I would have been on a walker now, which is not the concept or perception I have of myself. But anyway, what the ABCs, or advanced meningeal realignment, does is through a series of adjustments that this can undo this. So today, we're very honored to have Jess Jutkowitz, who founded this. Now, only about 5% of the chiropractors, as I understand, are even aware of this. So one of the goals is to get this information out. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jessie, then I'll put on Harry Wong, who will say a little bit more, and then our grand guest will be speaking. So Jessie, he describes, chiropractors either love me or not. For his discovery of creating the advanced biostructural correction. This is a method of manipulation that consistently and predictably corrects bodies so well that people say I have a brand new body. The website is iwantabrandnewbody.today, all those words together, or meningealrelease.com, which is more for professions. I'll put both of these in the chat. And so Harry, who is a practitioner of the ABCs, and I think he's mainly in charge of teaching it in the US. So I'll have Harry do a brief introduction. Harry, you're on.
I've been a chiropractor now. This is my 40th year in practice. I turned 70 this year. And 5 years ago, I mean, I've had a wonderful career and continue in chiropractic, but 5 years ago, I was starting to feel the effects of what most people would consider aging, meaning I was getting stiffer, my sciatica was coming back, and I was looked towards 5-10 years in the future, and I was not happy. And I happened to talk to a classmate of mine that I haven't spoken for 25 years, and he taught a different method of chiropractic, and he said, well, I found something new, and it is now doing everything we dreamed about doing as chiropractic students 35 years ago. And I said, what's that? He said, well, it's called ABC for Advanced Biostructural Correction. And I went on the website, and see, in chiropractic, there's never been anything like this. And so when I went on the website, meningealrelease.com, there's Dr. Jess Jutkowitz, and he says, okay, I'm going to have you test 5 things with your body, and then I'm going to teach you how to do this one thing, and then you're going to retest 5 things, and you will see vast improvements. I said, no way. This doesn't exist in chiropractic. See, most of chiropractic is manipulation. You come in, you crack your neck, crack your back. Some people feel fantastic with it. Some people feel horrible with it. Some people feel nothing with it. So you talk to chiropractors, they either love them or hate them. Well, that's because chiropractic up until now has been complete guesswork, but it wasn't only chiropractic. In physical medicine and in physical therapy, anybody who's trying to fix bodies, meaning straighten them up, get the body moving better, everybody's been guessing, not only chiropractors. We won't even count medicine because they're not even trying. They basically drug you up and make you not feel what you don't want to feel. So I'm on the website, and I told my wife, Alexa, come here. this guy, Jess Jutkowitz, says, we're going to test 5 things. So sure enough, we take pictures, postural pictures, front ways and sideways. You take a breath and you breathe and you see the effort for breathing, and you test a bunch of other things. And then I did this maneuver, which he taught on the video on the website. And I did it on my wife. And sure enough, her body went from here, her body popped up. She breathed better. So if my head feels clearer, see, in chiropractic, that doesn't exist. You crack people's back, you send them home, you kind of hope for the best. And sometimes you feel better, sometimes you don't. But the fact that he put this up and said that, I said, wow, this is different. This is a different approach. And that started my last 5-6 years of a journey. And as I started getting ABC care, my 65-year-old body got younger and younger and younger. And now at the age of 70, I'm more active today than I have probably been for 20, 25 years. As a 70-year-old, I'm mountain bike riding, and I ride with the kids, meaning 40 years and under. And when I take my helmet off, he goes, wow, you're like an old guy, like 50. And I'm 70, right? Now I'm leading the pack. So anyway, it's changed my life completely. And as I started learning ABC, I started to see how it not only worked on me, but it worked on everybody else I treated. And we're getting such consistent results. And that's why I'm so excited about ABC, because the results, for the first time ever, we have a technology that is consistent, that is repeatable over and over and over again because of major discoveries in ABC. And I'm sure Dr. Jutkowitz is here. He'll talk about the major discoveries of ABC. What it means is the experience of aging is now a whole different experience. I fully expect to be 80, 90, 100 years old, fully functioning, mountain bike riding, motorcycle riding, scuba diving, and teaching, and actually promoting ABC, because I think this is going to relieve a lot of unnecessary suffering that most people come into. So that's my history with ABC, and I'm more than happy to help anybody with knowledge, with experience and everything else.
Can you show him the examples of that Chinese lady who came in really sad, and then by the time the summer is over, was upright? Can you show those pictures?
Yeah, let me pull it up and I'll share my screen
And
then.
yeah, you can share your screen. I mean, give him some examples so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit, so we can allow.
Oh, well, if you want, we can have Jesse start. Okay, well.
How's that?
Yeah.
Can you see that one?
That's not, is that your work on the right?
No, that's actually, that is, if you could see that, that's a drawing of like the hand scoliosis stress as you get older. One of my practitioner's patients, the Asian woman, that's before and after her first visit with ABC.
Okay.
The older woman was 85 at the time, and that was actually a practitioner in Adelaide, Australia. He just took the course and hadn't been to a live training. And that's before and after the first day, and then 2 days later, after her, I think that was her second or third treatment. And she got much better from there. The last time I checked on her was years ago. She was 95. And she was telling everybody she was more active at 95 than she was at 60 because of what ABC could do. So that was that picture there. Thank you, Harry, for that introduction and all that. People often want me to start at the beginning, and the beginning of this is, I was a chiropractor doing my thing. Actually, the beginning of this really goes back to me going to chiropractic school. Me going to chiropractic school was an unusual circumstance because I didn't really know anything about chiropractic. My dad had gone years and years before that, when he couldn't go to work one day, and when we came home from work, he was up and walking around no problem. He took me to the guy's office, and the guy went to explain things, and he might as well have been talking Greek. He gave me no introduction, just started talking to me like I understood things. So I had no idea what he was talking about. But my dad was better, and so that was nice. And I had a history. I originally wanted to be a medical doctor, but I worked in Elizabeth General Hospital in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And oh, there's Harry's screen share.
So this is a patient that heard about ABC, and she was in the Philippines, and she said, "Can I help her?" I said, "I don't know. I've got to see you." And so she flew from the Philippines to Belmont, California, where my office is. And we took initial x-rays, and I do have them. I don't have before and after. Actually, she decided not to take post x-rays, but this is her posture on the left. She was on 5 different pain medications. She was, pretty disabled. And she stayed in the office, and she stayed for 3 months. And as she got care, she continued to get better and better. And she left and went back to the Philippines after 3 months. And she's she's off all her medications. I think she's 85 or something like that. And you can see the postural changes. But also, if you look at the back, looking at her back before and after, the scoliosis, she had a 60-degree scoliosis. And it looks like had we been able to take x-rays, we probably reduced the scoliosis by maybe 25, 35%. Just the outside pictures kind of show you that. So she was very happy when she left. As far as I know, she's still off her medication. She wants to come back, but she just hasn't. This is right before the pandemic. And that's, these results, as a chiropractor up until then for 35 years, we've never seen any results like this ever. In fact, if a patient came that way to me, I would just say, "I don't think I can help you because this is so severe." What we dreamed about with chiropractic is putting bones back in place. Well, what that means is your body will get straighter, wouldn't it? Every once in a while I crack a person's back and they would pop up, but that's every once in a while. Most people, as they got older, they actually got worse and worse over time and needed more and more care, just to feel better, and if it worked for them, But some patients I adjusted, same adjustment, same kind of patient, and they would react with it and they would just hate it. Not with ABC. ABC, it's such an amazing thing. Every single visit with every single patient, the body does pop up so consistently, people feel so much better. So there you go.
All right. And I take it you have more than one of those?
Oh, I have so many of these. Lots of befores and afters. This is just the more dramatic one because the person has such bad scoliosis like this.
Yep. And that's why when I put this picture up, but there's always somebody who, this woman Muriel posted, "It's our muscles that govern the arrangement of bones. So chiropractic should focus more on muscle holding." And you'll have to pardon me, I'm from New York and I'm a little bit direct, but that's a bunch of baloney. All right. And the fallacy is the muscles go from bone to bone. And so if the bones aren't in the right place, the muscles can't pull anyway. It's a loss. Anyway, the point is, if I continue, people usually want to know the whole story. So I was working in Elizabeth General Hospital, and somebody died of a heart attack, and blah blah. It's a whole story, but the end of it came
Jesse?
out. Yeah.
I just want to answer at that also from my perspective. And many patients come in and they do say, "I have tight muscles. I've been told I have tight muscles and I have to handle these tight muscles. I need to stretch them out," and things like that. And my question is always, well, do you notice you work on the tight muscles and you can do a variety of things? You can punch it, you can massage it, you can do a variety of techniques to relax the muscle, and the muscle will temporarily relax. But I say, do you notice that it always comes back? It always comes back. It never really goes away. and in my practice, without exception, they always say yes. And I say, well, here's the thing. Here's, a theory is it works. And, having a muscle problem is a theory, and, it can be valid. However, it has to prove itself out. So I said, well, the theory I'm presenting you is that the muscles are tight because they're trying to balance your body. They're trying to compensate for things it can't fix. And if we fix those things that it can't fix, the muscle will relax. And that's the theory, like any other theory. And what I'll do is I'll find the bone that's out of place, adjust it, and all of a sudden the patient goes, wow, the muscle let go, like tight muscles in the shoulders. We'll adjust something in the body correctly. We'll find out what it is. We treat that. And that muscle invariably, every time relaxes and gets softer. And that proves out the theory. So, I always invite, all theories, may be worth investigating or not, but it's the theories that actually produce consistent results that will be the valid ones. And I see that in practice every single day. So that's just, I wanted to answer that question from a practitioner's viewpoint. Thank you, Jesse.
All right. Well, you can answer that, and then she put, there's a reason chiropractic sessions are often followed by massage therapy. And the point is, chiropractic, as it is known as chiropractic, doesn't work, right? Manipulation does. Anyway, so to continue my story, so the thing that came out of working in the hospital was all the doctors said, if they don't have an infection where we have antibiotics, or we can't do carpentry or plumbing on them, which is vascular surgery or orthopedic surgery, there really isn't much we can do for people. And I was like, no, I didn't want to be in this profession. So I was aimless for quite a few years. And it's a story, but a friend told me I should be a chiropractor. I can help people and make a lot of money. And I must admit, at that time in my life, making a lot of money sounded really good. And so I knew my father had helped somebody, so I went. So when you get into school, the freshmen, the first year students are the fodder, or the people that the third year students practice on in the junior clinic before they become seniors and go into the senior clinic. So this guy takes x-rays and he puts them up and he gives me this whole long explanation. And again, I had no idea what he was talking about. And he lays me down on a table and he gets his hands over here and whack, he hits my atlas, which is the first vertebrae below your head, really hard. And besides scaring the living daylights out of me and all this other stuff, I got up and I felt really strange. And it was like, wow, what the heck? Oh my God. And within an hour or two later, I realized this stomach pain that I had since I was born, as far as I know, I always had this stomach pain. It was gone. And I was like, wow, that's strange. And I went out that night and I had the spiciest food I could find at some Asian restaurant, whatever it was. And I just had this really super spicy food and no reaction to it, no stomach reaction to it or anything else. I was pretty amazed about that. The next day, I went out for this really greasy food dinner, which used to set me off. So I was like, wow, this stuff works. Okay. And so the first semester, is all anatomy, physiology, how the body works and all this other stuff. Not too much chiropractic stuff where I was at Northwestern College of Chiropractic. Then when we finally got into chiropractic studies, the second semester or after that, I have an engineering background. It's not as formal as other people have, and a lot of it is self-taught. And so, when you learn things self-taught, you have to have a better understanding than when somebody's just teaching you in school. So it's a little bit different there. But the things these doctors were saying about chiropractic just couldn't be. One example is a guy said, if you lay a person down and push down on their back, and then if you stand the person up and you put your hand behind them and push on their body, the same thing's going to happen. And I raised my hand, the loudmouth guy from New York, And I said, wait a second. I said, if I go out in the parking lot and I get behind my car and push it, and then I get in front of my car and I push it, are you telling me the car's gonna go the same direction? And the guy's up there, he says, no, bodies are different. I said, Charlie, stand up. I was standing up. And my friend Charlie said, I don't want to get involved in this, Jess. And everybody laughed, and I had him stand up. And I reached across and I pushed him. I pushed, and his body went this way. And then I reached around to his other shoulder and I pulled, and his body went this way. And I looked up at the doctor and I said, no, bodies are not that different. And he said, I'll talk to you about it after class. And I said, okay. And he went on with his class and said what he had to say. And then I went up there after class, and he's up on a little lectern and he's looking down at me. And he looks down at me and he says, don't you ever do that to me again, and walks out of the class. And that was my first introduction to this stuff. Works really fantastically, because it definitely fixed my stomach thing. I hadn't had it since the guy did it, like, months before that. But these guys don't seem to know how it works. And most chiropractic students go on that. You can ask Harry, you can ask about any other chiropractor. And most of them, they're in school and they find out that what they're told, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it makes people worse. And, people don't want to admit that, but it's inconsistent and unpredictable. So I went on this huge search, and I eventually ended up looking at a thing called spinal column stressology with this guy, Lowell Ward, who had he had gotten a friend of his, Clint Fulkerson, who was an aeronautical engineer, involved, and they had these measurements and things like that, and it worked out pretty well. And it's a much longer story, but all this is there, and we worked on things and blah 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 blah. And so what Ward had, he had this whole he wrote this book, The Dynamics of Spinal Stress, which is long out of print and almost impossible to get. Actually, I have a copy of it here. Anyway, he had this book, The Dynamics of Spinal Stress, and he wrote about the forward stress factor and all this. And then somebody came into his office and he dismissed him. And he dismissed them from care because their spinal measurements were in what they called normal limits. And the woman said, Dr. Ward, you've been fantastic. My back pain is gone, and this whole thing. And she says, if only my hip didn't hurt so much, I would think you were fantastic. And he said it was strange to him. His name is Lowell Eugene Ward. Friends called him Gene. Gene said, it was really strange to me that her hip could hurt because her spine was within normal limits. Nothing should be hurting. And he says, as he tells the story, I wouldn't have thought about it much, except at the end of the day, I asked my sister, who worked for him as a secretary, to type something up. And she said, Gene, I'd love to, but my hip is just killing me. I need to go home. And he knew her spinal x-rays were within normal limits. And she shouldn't have been hurt. And she said the same thing. So he had the woman who he had dismissed, who was a patient, come back. And he took x-rays, and we were taking full spine x-rays. Took x-rays of her sitting. And in the sitting position, your pelvis changes. All right. In the standing position, your pelvis is up like this. In the sitting position, your pelvis is down like that. And it changes the leverage, and it changes the pull on your meninges, which are like a big rubber band in your spine. And all of a sudden, the body collapsed, and he saw all the things that he had theorized as a forward stress factor and blah, 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 blah. And so, and then I graduated school just after that and took his course. And we used to talk. I spent thousands of dollars on the phone with him. In those days, I was in Connecticut and he was in California, and long distance, you had to pay for phone long distance. And so we discovered, a whole bunch of things. I brought up all these things. Ward understood the chiropractic end, and his friend Clint Fulkerson understood the engineering end. All right. But they had to talk to get things together and know. And I had both the engineering background and the chiropractic background, so I was able to put it together better. And it's a whole long thing, and Ward got stuck in the body mind thing later, and it's a whole other story. But I ended up figuring out this whole thing. And the key piece of information, the key datum, is I had all these x-rays up, and I'm looking at all these x-rays. I used to put a string in my office and hang up these x-rays, and I'd be looking at them, because I would always take series every 2 to 6 weeks on people. I would take another set of films, and so I could see this series of things here. And finally, I'm looking at these things, and I realized, the problem here is bones are going out of place in a direction the body cannot self-correct, because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed. And I just looked at that and I was like, well, everybody knows that. And that was my thought. My thought was, this is so obvious, everybody knows this. All right. And so I didn't think it was that important. And so over the next couple days, a week, I was talking to patients about this, and they all were surprised, and they said, gee, I thought the body could move in every direction. And I was like, well, no, and I put my hand on their spine. I'd say, if the bone moves right or left, you've got muscles that go from the ribs that can go back and forth, sideways, and they could pull them into place, right? Likewise, if they rotate, you have muscles there that can rotate them into a better position. And I said, if they go backward, you have in the front, you have the diaphragm and other muscles that can pull them forward up here. And then down lower, you have the psoas, which goes over your pelvis and attaches to your legs. You can't even stand up from a sitting position without pulling your spine forward all the way down there. And so you have muscles that can pull in that direction. And then I put my hand on their back, and I'd say, if one of these bones goes forward, what do you have back here? What do you have back here that can pull that way? And they all talked about the extensor muscles. You can arch your back backward. I said, well, that sounds good, but those muscles go up and down, and you can tilt the body backward. And when I talk to chiropractors about this, they would say, well, yeah, but if one of the bones is forward and you lean backward, the bone goes like this. I said, well, wait, you're assuming this one is stable, but this one's not stable. This one moves too. And I could show them that on x-ray. And they all looked at me, and they think about it, and they go, nah. And just like that, nah, that wouldn't be, right? But nobody else in the world, you can look all over the world, all over the internet, nobody else is claiming or saying, I can treat you once, and immediately your body's going to start staying upright all by itself, except for me and the people who I've taught who do ABC, all right? The closest people are the people who do chiropractic biophysics, and they're talking about changing posture months later. And if you look at all their people are trying to stand up straight. My people are all breathe in, breathe out, relax, and let your body slump. If you look at the website is, you can go on iwantabrandnewbodytoday.com. All right, just iwantabrandnewbodytoday.com. Or you can go on ABC Miracles. That goes to the main website now, meningealrelease.com. And you can see all these pictures. If you search on the internet and look for ABC practitioners, you'll see tons of standing and sitting full, or you'll see tons of before and after pictures where the people are curved over like this when they start, and then popped up straight like Harry's pictures that you saw there, because that's what happens. All right. And so all that, it just goes away. And what happens is, an interesting thing that happens, if you take a rubber band and you twist it up and you keep twisting it more and more, it eventually, it winds on itself, and then it winds on itself. I actually may have, I don't know if I have a picture of that. Let me see. I have, yeah. If you, let me share this. So if you have this rubber band here and you start twisting it up, it twists, and then the twist, and it makes lumps like this and everything else, and it keeps twisting up and bumping and everything else. Well, it turns out if you take x-rays of people and you measure everything, and you have to understand it's a little bit different than people think, because looking at x-rays is a little bit, it seems like a big mystery for people, and it is, but if you look at like chiropractic x-rays, so you look up here, this is actually, this was a 72-year-old guy. This was April of 2011, August of 2011, April of 2012, August of 2012, and then another one was about 6 or 12 months later. I don't remember exactly, but you can see that the first one's on the right and the last one's on the left. You look at them and you see some sort of curve there and everything, and you don't really understand it until you start putting lines in. Now, I put in about half the lines I put in usually measuring everything else. And you can see here on this first one, if we look at this one here, right? So this is the same thing there. If you look at this, so you can see this first one on the right is all herky-jerky with the vertebrae going down on one side, down on the other side, down this way, down that way. And what you don't realize is every change in angle is a change in curve. All right, so this guy's got curves every change in the angle. And then we treated him, so April to August, what's that, about 5 months? We treated him, and gee, this looks a lot more sinuous. It looks a lot more curvy and a lot more smooth, which means a lot of these small curves came out. And then here you could see 6 months later, or what was that, 7, 8 months later, whatever it is, you could see that the spine starts to go into some sort of curve here, but it's still smoother. See, even if you compare each vertebrae here in this picture, this is still smoother than this is, even though it's got more curves in it. And then this one is even more smooth. And, this is downright straight, fairly straight and sinuous. And remember, this is a 72-year-old guy. Now, if we take the side view x-rays, so this is the same person. Let me stretch this out so you can see it. This is the same person on the side view. And so this is the same as the front view x-ray. All right. Because it's just a person sideways. And you can't really understand what these mean until you draw on lines. Now, on this x-ray here on the side, you can see this line here, and these, these lines that are going up and down, even though they're on an angle, you can see they cross the lines through the vertebrae at a 90-degree angle, which means each one of those is a flat spot. And one of the things that came out of the x-ray analysis is that the more curve there is on the side view, the better the person's body is, even if that curve is reversed, right? So it doesn't really matter as long as there's more curve. Now, so here you look at, this is the August view, and you can see most of the flat spots are gone. He's got one small area here of 2 vertebrae that are still blocked, but everything else is more curvy, and the angles change at every vertebrae. And then this is what, 7 or 8 months later after that one. And you can see the curves are much better here. And then they get much better. And then here it comes and the neck starts to go this way. And if you put these into a 3-dimensional picture, and it's not that easy. I mean, these things were done in 2011, 2010. By then we had, what do you call it? We had the computer-aided design and all this stuff. but I had done the research. I had thousands of x-rays, and the guy who taught Harry, the guy who told Harry about ABC, this guy Jerry Porter, he wanted to, when I closed my practice and everything, he asked about the x-rays, and I had sold them for, so they take up tons of room. I mean, this thing took up a small bedroom size room for storage. And so I had sold them for the silver and everything else. And he was like, "Oh my God, all that research down there." And I was like, "Well, I already knew what it was. So I didn't have a big deal on it, but I've come to realize that I was really stupid to sell those x-rays and lose all that research. One of my less stellar moments in life, okay, having done that. But these things are pretty easily duplicated if you just do this and you get this straightened out. But so that's the type of research I did, and that's where they went. And you could see there's other, you look at the x-rays, and until you start measuring things out, you really don't know what's going on there. And that becomes the essence of what's going. And so a long story short, if you think about bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct, it's a big deal, okay? But the converse, the other side of that, okay? And it was funny, converse means the opposite side of some idea. And I said converse, and somebody said the sneakers, and I was like, no. And we looked up the word converse, and it meant the other side of the idea. But the converse of bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct turns out to be almost more important than bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct to begin with, because the converse tells you how and why manipulation doesn't work when it doesn't work. And the reason manipulation doesn't work when it doesn't work is because if you treat bones out of place that the body can self-correct but does not. So you have bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed. And you have bones out of place in a direction the body can self-correct, but it does not self-correct them. It can self-correct the bones because there are muscles that can pull them in the direction needed. All right, but the body doesn't self-correct them. And when the body doesn't self-correct them, people talk about weak nerves and weak muscles and all this other baloney. And the reason I say it's baloney is because you've got electric muscle stimulators, you've got nerve stimulators, you got all these things that can compensate and make up for any weak muscles or nerves. And none of them ever worked. Not only that, the whole muscle theory and all this other stuff, some guy in the chat thing put up this myofascial pain trigger point manual. All that stuff has been around since forever. Okay, you got Chinese medicine things. They call it, in China they call it TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, and they have acupuncture, and they have all these trigger point therapies in the muscle and everything else. And none of this stuff works consistently or predictably because it's just it's not the basic factor. All right, think about the basic factor. There's one factor and all these other things grow from it. All right, and that factor is bones go out of place in a direction the body cannot self-correct because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed. So then we go back to people have bones out of place in a direction the body can self-correct because there are muscles pulling in the direction needed, and the body doesn't self-correct them. And the answer is, well, why would the body not correct those? There's got to be a reason. And so if you look at all the reasons, you find out that those bones that are out of place that the body can self-correct but does not are part of the compensation pattern to handle the imbalances caused by the bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct. All right. So if you look at the sequence, all right, let's say that's forward. All right, and here's your spine. And it doesn't just happen in the spine. It happens in your feet, it happens in your legs and things like that. Just a quick aside before I do this thing. If you take a look at your feet, if the tarsal bones, the bones of your ankle, if one of them falls down, right, you don't have anything that can pull those bones up. There's no muscle that goes from the top of those bones up. All right, so one of those collapses and then your foot twists, and then that twists your calf down, your foot, that twists your calf and that twists your thigh. And, the thigh bone comes up and then goes on an angle to make your hip, and that has leverage. And so that twists your pelvis, and you end up with a whole compensation pattern for that. So it's not just bones out of place in a direction your body can't self-correct in your spine. But the spine's easy to talk about because people have reality on it. So the one direction you can't self-correct is backward, right? You don't have any muscles back here that can pull, they don't go from your spine to something behind your spine. So they can't pull backwards. All right. So if one of these bones goes forward, now, first thing that happens is you lose bone leverage and the body collapses forward. And, it's always funny. I actually have, do I have these? Let's see. Yeah, here, let me, I have an animation we made for this. And let's, all right. So when you talk to chiropractors and you talk about a bone going forward, they all think it looks like this, right? They think this bone goes forward like that. And that's what they're looking for in an x-ray. And it's just plain silly, because if this bone goes forward here, okay, how does this upper part of the spine stay there? Okay, because this bone goes forward. How does this stay there? What do they think? There's some sort of framework that keeps it there? It doesn't, all right? So what happens here is when that bone goes forward, the entire spine above it collapses forward, all right? And this is how people's bodies fall forward, all right? So if you look at this, what people think happens is on the left there, and what actually happens is on the right. So instead of just this bone going forward, you have the entire body collapse. All right. And then if you correct that, all right, the body pops up. All right. So if what I'm saying is true, when you do a correction like that, the body pops up. And if you look at all the before and after pictures we have and everything else, that's indeed what happens starting with the first visit. All right. And so that's what happens. But let's get back to the sequence here. So bone goes out of place in a direction your body can't self-correct. The body collapses forward. You don't want to be like that. All right. Who wants to stand there like this? Nobody. So what do? Well, you don't have just muscle. There's no muscles that can pull backward, but you do have plenty of other muscles, and they can twist and turn and tilt your vertebrae. And so you turn it, you twist it, you tilt it, you do whatever you can to stabilize it. Now, if you think about that, that causes yet another misalignment. And then you have to compensate elsewhere for this. So when you have a bone that goes out of place in a direction your body can't self-correct, you don't have a compensation. You have an entire body compensation pattern that you use to deal with that. All right. So this whole idea, there's an idea that if you could find the original bone out of place and put it in place, the body will just go back to its, forget it. It's not going to happen. All right. Because part of the compensation pattern is other bones going forward in a direction your body can't self-correct. So there's a whole big mess of patterns. But the important part, we're still talking about the converse to bones out of place that the body can't self-correct. So the other side of that is bones out of place that the body can self-correct but doesn't. And this is where chiropractic and other forms of manipulation fail, because they don't differentiate between bones out of place that the body can self-correct and bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct. If you go to correct bones out of place that the body can self-correct but doesn't, you're going to ruin the compensation pattern. Now, when you ruin the compensation pattern, the bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct, they collapse more. And so this is why manipulation is inconsistent. Sometimes it works miracles. Sometimes it has no real noticeable effect. And sometimes it causes problems. All right. Well, the truth of the matter is sometimes it has a good effect, and most of the times it causes problems. But the problems are usually not big enough for people to notice. And if somebody pushes on something and you hear a crack and, oh, my back feels better, but you took away the compensation pattern, now you can't breathe as well. But people don't measure breathing, so they don't know. All right. So that's why you have all these people who gradually decline over time, no matter what. Whereas people who get treated just correcting the bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct, they pop up and they get more and more. Now, the reason I showed you that rubber band is because when you have this, all right, as you treat the person and they get more stable, they start letting go of the compensations. Remember, the compensations are there because you're unstable and you're trying to compensate and counterbalance the problems. All right, the imbalance is caused by the bones out of place that the body can't self-correct. So as you unlock these things, your body, if you take full spine x-rays and you measure it, your body literally unwinds like a big spring, or actually it unwinds like a big twisted up rubber band. All right. And if you measure all the lines and everything and you get the mathematics of that, it's very much the same as the mathematics of that rubber band unwinding. You saw it wind, but imagine it unwinding. It's if you look at the mathematics of that as an engineer, not as a doctor or anything like that, just as an engineer, you see that the mathematics are very much the same. And then people say, well, how can that be? Because your spine can't go in 360 degrees. And that's a mistake. All right. The spine cannot, each vertebra can't move in 360 degrees, but the force can. And so what happens is your spine twists around here and it goes as far as it can go, but there's more force going in that direction. So your spine kinks over to the side and then continues to wind up. Right. So it goes, it kinks, and then it keeps going. So it keeps winding up like that. And so it ends up like a big rubber band twisted around with a bunch of kinks. All right. And that's what you saw on that first x-ray of that guy. All those little vertebrae, one goes this way, one goes this way, one goes this way, one goes this way. There's all these little back and forth. Well, those are the kinks. And if you go into the mathematics of it, it's a whole thing, with calculus and looking at the acceleration of the curves, and it's three-dimensional and it's all that. But it's a really neat thing because you don't have to understand any of that. All right. I could take anybody who's not totally invalided and teach them how to correct bodies in about a week. Because all you really have to know is how to find the bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct, that you can find in any one day, because you can't find them all right? And then you correct those the best you can, and it's a series of maneuvers that are not difficult to learn. All right, I actually find them, because chiropractors have been taught so many other things, I actually find that I could teach lay people off the street, and we teach plenty of them. I find that we can teach them better and faster than we could teach chiropractors, because when we teach the chiropractors, they all think they know what's going on, and so it becomes a mistake, and they don't do what they can do. If you go on ABC Miracles or I Want a Brand New Body Today.com, it leads you to an online course, and you could learn how to do this yourself. Now, I'm here talking. Sue asked me to talk about this. I'm not trying to sell the course as my main thing here. That's not my issue. All right. My issue is you can fix your own family without having to even go to a professional. And there's plenty of professionals on here, and that. But if you want to get it done right, you go to Harry. You don't have to think about it, and you're done. All right. How long will it take you to get as good as Harry? Well, it'll take a while, but you can learn enough so that you don't have to go that often. right? So that's there. And you know, all these all these other things, like somebody posted up this tooth misalignment thing and everything. They're all true, but they're not the basic factor. The basic factor is bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed. And for that person who posted about the muscles, once I discovered this datum, and this is like the key datum in healthcare, right? You know, there is nutrition, and I don't have anything to do with that. But I will tell you that nutrition works out to be the same thing. You have to give the body the things that it can't self-create. You know, that's why they have essential amino acid. That's a whole other story. All right. And there are bacteria and other, you know, viruses and things like that. And if you get an infection and you want to cure it with ABC, you're going to be dead and out of luck. Right. You know, you get an infection or something like that, you know, go get your antibiotics or whatever, and that'll kill the bugs and you can have a healthy life again. But more things than you can imagine are related to your structure. And so that woman who posted the thing about the muscles, as I discovered the bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct and started just treating that, my practice got busier and busier, and I didn't have time to do the soft tissue work. You know, I started with all that stuff just like everybody else. Acrostic, and I had the things and this and that and everything. I had all that stuff. And what I discovered, and it was a discovery because I just didn't have time to treat people with that, is I discovered all that stuff disappeared as the person's body unwound. And I was trying to make sense out of this. And I was like, well, if the bones line up, the muscles line up, and I'm looking at all this old research. And if you go into the 1950s, there's a whole set of research. You know, the exercise physiologists have this gigantic body of research, right? And if you go into the 1950s, there's this whole body of research that if the muscle is relaxed, there's no activity. There's no spasm, there's no this, there's just no activity. All right. And you know, the way they did this is they took Kendall and Kendall, which is these physical therapists have a thing of how all the muscles move, and they would relax them, and they would put electrical needles in them to look for electrical activity. And when the muscles relax, nothing. All right. And so the way it works out, you know, for all these muscle people that say, oh, the muscles move the bones. Yeah, but they can only move the bones if the bones are there. So when you line up the body exactly right, the muscles relax. And all this stuff disappears. All these tissue adhesions that are there because it's fighting, it all disappears when the bones and the body aligns. And that is not my idea. That is a physical observation and discovery that anybody can make if they do this. So, you know, you need to do this on your own, and it goes from there. So the doc has a question here. Would you be able to respond to what to do when a hip gives out? And the question is, well, what's the story with the hip giving out? All right. You know, if you have, you know, the hip is a ball and socket type thing. And if that either the ball or the socket is misshapen, you're not going to fix that with anything. All right. I'm sorry to tell you, I have tons of people who come into me, they get x-rays and you can see the pelvis and the thing is misshapen. And I tell them, I can treat you and line up all the bones I want, but that misshapen thing is not going to change. And they go get a hip replacement. And unless they mess up the hip replacement, which is pretty unusual for them to do, after they get the hip replacement, you can straighten up the person's body and it's no big deal. They actually do really well with hip replacements now. And people are always, you know, really surprised. Oh my God, he's recommending surgery and all this. And it's there. There's a woman in Australia who's the wife of a chiropractor, and she fell and her leg hit straight down in the 70s and all this. And I didn't meet her until the early 2000s. And she had a sheaf of x-rays like this thick. All right. She got them like every year or whatever, however often, from the 70s when she had the injury. And you could see the ball, you know, the femur, the top of it is supposed to be round and everything. And you can see there was a flat spot there. And I said, oh, I said, so you're walking and every once in a while, all of a sudden that thing catches, you know, and then you shake it a little bit and it gets better. She looks at me and she goes, yeah, how'd you know? I said, well, you got a flat spot in there. When that flat spot hits just the wrong spot, it doesn't move. I said, you just need to go get a hip replacement. And she looked at me astonished. You know, how can you're a chiropractor, you know, how can you recommend this surgery? And the answer is nothing's going to change that. And they actually do a decent job with the hip. So that's the answer for that, Sue. But there's plenty of times when the hip bothers people, and it's not because the bone's misshapen, it's because something else is twisted. And you just run through the ABC protocol and it handles that. All right. The biggest factor that I have seen that people get hip problems from is sitting. They sit in a position that twists their pelvis and their legs get stuck in this compensation. And if they don't get up and shake that out, it's not going to help. All right. It's just, that's what's going on. All right. So now we have a question on scoliosis. All right. And so we have all these, all right. So it's scoliosis was discovered, main cause of scoliosis. All right. Relationship with heavy metal and other. Forget about all these chemistry problems. All right. Chemistry problems are not going to cause scoliosis. All right. These are mechanical problems. I have, let's see, and the mechanical problems are different than what people think. All right. And believe it or not, they're related to bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct because there's no muscle pulling in the direction needed. So if we come here, this one here, come here, if you look at this x-ray, all right, and I know a lot of you are not used to looking at x-rays, but if you look down here, all right, this bone is the sacrum, and it's supposed to be at a 50-degree angle, and it's less. And this bone is the fifth lumbar. Now, between these two bones, there's supposed to be a 20-degree curve. And this is much less than 20 degrees. And because that's less than 20 degrees, all right, so that's supposed to be like 15 to 20 degrees and the person's upright. So as this goes forward, the person's whole body goes forward, all right? So that bone gets stuck out of place forward and you have no way to bring it back, all right? But you don't want to end up on your face. So what do? Well, you lean backward above that. And if we go back to that x-ray, let's share that again. If you go back to that x-ray, what you could see is this angle here. So this is the fourth lumbar vertebrae and that one's the fifth. That disc is supposed to be just a slight angle. And this is maybe 2 or 3 times the amount of angularity it's supposed to have. And same thing here. All right. These two discs are supposed to be about like this type of angle. All right. Almost parallel. This one is much closer, but this vertebra slipped backwards. So it's got its own problems. But see, this is leaning backward. Now, if you look over here where this arrow is, all right, you're looking at the spinous processes here. And if you trace it, this is a piece of bone here. That's the back of your vertebrae, that the spine part that sticks out. And this one is from L4, all right? And if you look closely, this one seems to overlap that one. Now, that can happen, all right? You got to remember when you're looking at the x-ray, all right? So the spinous processes are like my thumbs here. So when you're looking at the x-ray, if one overlaps the other, it's like this, all right? One's in front of the other, all right? And so what happens there, between L5 and the sacrum, all right, there's a lot of room for that thing to extend about 20 degrees, all right? without the back of the vertebra hitting, without the spinuses of the vertebra hitting. But between L4 and L5, there isn't that much room. Those spines are already very close. So if you have to twist L4 backward in order to not fall over, in order not to jam these vertebrae together, in order not to jam the spinuses together, you have to twist it. And so you look at L4 on top of L5 in the front view, and you see this thing starting to twist. And in this particular person, the difference, if you look at the X-ray here, let's go back to this. If you look here, L4 has more room to lean backward than L3 does. L3 is supposed to be just about parallel, and this is a really big angle, all right, on the side view. Well, you can see these bones back here. They don't, you don't want them to jam together because that hurts. I mean, think about your entire body weight being leaned back on those bones. That hurts. And so what happens is, if you look over here on the front view, this is L5, and it's fairly level, maybe a little bit tilted to the right. L4 is much more tilted to the right than L5 is. And people go, oh, that's not too big of a curve. That's huge at the bottom of your spine, all right? And then you can see L3 is actually tilted even more. And L2, you can see that one, if you look at the side view, that's the one that shifts backward here. That's not, see, this is supposed to be a smooth line. This is supposed to line up with the back of this. And this thing's so far backward. Now she starts to go into a big curve here, and then it curves this way, and then it curves that way. And you look at this and people go, well, that's not too big of a curve, but that's the beginning of making a big scoliosis. And that's how that happens. And so what happens is you just have to find the bones out of place that the body can't self-correct and correct them the best you can, and the thing unwinds. Now, the big mistake that people do is they look at the front view. All right. Your body, let's see. Your spine, it gets twisted up like a big spring. All right. And when you're getting treated, it unwinds. Now, when it unwinds, it goes all sorts of different directions from the front view. So the front view is the least valuable thing. It's the most ridiculous thing to look at because your body's constantly going back and forth. But what's the issue in scoliosis? The issue in scoliosis is organ compression. Because they say, you twist and the body collapses forward. And as your body collapses forward, it compresses your heart and lungs and other organs down below. All right. So that's your issue. Well, 100% of people, and people say nothing's ever 100%, but let me tell you, we've never seen it not be. 100% of people who get the ABC protocol the first time, which is correcting bones out of place that the body cannot self-correct because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed. 100% of people pop up starting with the first visit. Now, they don't all straighten up. I mean, like Sue's got this big kyphosis, and she went from being like this to like this, all right, and much better. And she actually came, I know because she came to a couple seminars. And as we treated her, she got treated by the students and with me watching and getting everything exactly right. And she's much more straight than she ever was. And she's getting better and better. And these things unwind out. But the big thing, if you're thinking about scoliosis, the big thing is from the side view, when people are compressed down, it compresses the organs. And as soon as they pop up, starting with that first visit, the whole issue of organ compression is gone. And we have people, it's funny, we have people, they get x-rays 6 months later. Excuse me for a second, I'm going to get some water.
Anyway, as Jesse's getting water, I'd like to just chime in. This is Dr. Harry Wong, is that he talked about non-professionals learning ABC, and I agree with him. Non-professionals actually learn ABC faster than professionals because as chiropractors, we're trained to crack bones in certain ways. And because of the new discoveries of ABC, it's a whole different approach to correcting spinal problems and structural problems of the body. And in fact, every single month, for usually a Wednesday night, I give a free class to start training people at no cost to learn parts of ABC. And if you're local or not, you're invited to come to the office. I guess Dr. Susan can, you can put my cell phone down, just text me, and I'll put you on my text list, and you can come actually learn parts of ABC. We're on a mission to reduce pain and suffering, so that's why we're training and teaching anybody who wants to learn this.
And I can tell you, Harry is an excellent trainer. He does an excellent job. All right. All right. So that's basically how scoliosis goes. And so if you start correcting the things that the body can't self-correct, the body pops up. And if you look at them from the front view, you know, what has to happen if one vertebra is twisted like this and another one's twisted like this, and then it goes the other way around, all right? Well, the whole body has to go sideways to line up with this one before this can straighten. And so a lot of times it looks like the side-to-side curves are getting worse, but they're not. All right, they're just unwinding, and it's three-dimensional. All right. So if you look over here, let's see, a couple people. My mother has a severe kyphosis. Basically, her chin is on her chest, so she cannot hold up her head normally. What's the success rate for this problem? Well, Harry already showed you that woman who was twisted up and she was older. The success rate for the problem is very high. All right. But it depends on whether the bones are compressed or not, and the shape. If you're anywhere near where Harry is, take your mom and you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Even if the bones are compressed and down and everything else like that, it'll straighten out as much as it can. And she will tell you her life is much better from that. You know, I've had people, one woman was pretty funny. Her chin wasn't quite on her chest, but it was down forward a lot, like the picture that Harry showed you. And her daughter brought her in, and I treated her, and I mean, she popped up that much. You know, I'm sure you were expecting me to say, "Oh, she popped it." No, she popped. She went from here to here, and her daughter, who was one of my clients, and you know, really straight, was upset. She said, "I thought my mom would straighten out a lot more than that." And her mom, who was standing next to her, actually hit her. She whacked her, and she said, "Are you kidding me? I feel much straighter." And I was like, you don't realize how seriously forward she is, and it's going to take a little while. But she did end up, and instead of being like this, she ended up like this. And I don't think I ever got her any straighter than that. We didn't take x-rays, but she had vertebral compressions, bone compressions in several areas. But going from here to here for her, it brought her back to life. And within 5 or 6 months, she said she was more active than she had been in the past 20 years. So definitely take your mom into Harry, and if you're there local or some other ABC practitioner, and you'll be phenomenally happy. All right. And then somebody else has a question here. Does scoliosis usually begin in youth? All right. And the answer is scolioses begin when people get injured and things go forward and they have to twist to the point where it starts causing other problems, and you have to twist. See, scoliosis is basically bones go, especially in the lower back, like I showed you on the x-ray. A vertebra goes forward in a direction your body can't self-correct, and you have to compensate somewhere else, and it jams other things together. So you have to start twisting to avoid the bones at the bottom of your spine from jamming together. All right. And that creates the curve. All right. That's most of, not all scoliosis, but that's most of them. And, you know, if it happens in youth, it happens in youth. there are plenty of people whose spines were straight all the way through their youth, and in the 20s or 30s, they get injured, and all of a sudden they have this big scoliosis and they start to collapse. All right. It's just a structural collapse, and it follows a very consistent direction. All right. I can talk a lot, you know. Donna said, I heard Jesse say he's retired. I didn't retire. I closed my practice up in Connecticut, and now I run around the world teaching ABC. Actually, I used to run around the world teaching ABC. COVID taught me a lesson. My wife, Allison, found this gorgeous property down in, we're in Harrisburg, North Carolina, just north of Charlotte. We've got about 6 acres here, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I used to travel. I was never home for more than for me to be home 3 weeks in a row was a really unusual thing. And then COVID came, and I was home actually for about 5 or 6 weeks for the first time. And then, you know, then I was home for a couple months. And I really like home. I really like it here. So I don't travel anywhere near as much. Harry had me out to California to do a seminar out there. And Harry's probably hearing this for the first time. But I came home and I said, you know what? I don't want to fly out there anymore. I'm tired of flying around the world doing this stuff. I didn't want to fly out of the country. I don't even want to fly out to California anymore. All right. And funny thing is, we ended up, we bought a camper. And we take the camper and we drive. I mean, I drive. Michigan was like 12 hours of driving. So we, you know, we divided it up in 6 hours. But I love it because we have this camper, and it's only a van type camper. It's not one of these big things you pull or one of these big, gigantic monstrosities. But the best thing about it is I have the bed set up, so I don't have to go into a hotel room and try and get a bed or a pad or anything like that. I could sleep in the camper and I'm done. All right. So if you're within driving distance of a couple of days, I'm likely to have a seminar near you that I'll teach. If I have to fly, well, we're negotiating with whether I'm going to fly out to Harry's in January and do those seminars or not, or we're going to get somebody else to do them. God knows Harry can do all but the advanced. So that's there. All right. As you can see, I don't know if you're looking at Harry, but you can see that. All right. Let's see. Yes, most of my time is spent teaching. Muriel, another thing I've noticed is that muscles get lazy and I don't flex as in youth. Can that contribute to scoliosis? It can, but get off your tush and go take a long walk. You'll be fine. All right. I mean, the muscles don't get lazy. You get lazy, and the muscles don't work. You know, you're not your body. You're the thing that runs it, the spirit or the soul, whatever you want to call yourself. All right. You stop using your body. And like me, I stopped using my body as much. I stopped running around, you know, because I was running around the world and all this stuff, but I didn't stop eating as much. So now I carry a lot of weight. Right. And people say, you know, you're all into health and everything like that. How come you carry so much weight? And the answer is, I'm also into enjoying and eating. So I do that. And frankly, if your body works, you don't have to worry about most of the things that happen with weight. You know, your arteries get clogged and this and that and everything. Well, if your chest is up and works, all right, your blood flow is good and all this other stuff, you don't have to worry about that as much. All right. When they do they do spirometry, which is how much you can fill your lungs. All right. Unless I've just eaten, when I, you know, breathe in and breathe out maximally, I have 118% of what's considered maximal for my height, weight, and age. All right. You can take any ABC patient who has been treated for more than 3 or 4 months and do a vital, you know, check their Vmax, the maximum volume of their blowing. It will all, unless there's something really, really messed up, and that happens, but almost all of them will have 100+% of what is considered normal. And the reason is because what they anticipate on people is people whose bodies are in a collapse. You get ABC, your body comes out of the collapse and you pop up. All right. All right. Andrea, practitioner from Venice, Italy. what is the best approach to patients with scoliosis? All right. So the best approach to patients with scoliosis is the explanation. And the explanation is the only reason to be worried about scoliosis is because your body is collapsing forward and it's going to compress the organs. Otherwise, there's no worry about it at all. All right. And so you treat them, and you don't need x-rays. You can take before and after just pictures, and you'll see their body starts to pop up. And as soon as their body starts to pop up, you could say, well, your body's popping up. You don't have to worry about organ compression. Don't worry about the side-to-side curves. That's going to change as your body untwists. That's going to change a lot. As long as you don't start collapsing forward, you don't have to worry about anything. That's your best approach to talking to people about scoliosis. As far as treatment, just run the ABC protocol. All right. The x-rays to determine breakdown side. You can use sitting and standing full spine x-rays, or you can just use your usual sit test or stretch test. People with a big scoliosis, the stretch test tends to be a little bit more reliable than the sit test because they go in various directions. Donna, I know you're in California. I don't know where you are in California, but Harry's there. If you're in Northern California, Harry is fantastic, and there's some other people up there. If you're in Southern California, Rob, what's his name? What's Rob's name? He's in Huntington Beach. Rob Reynoso. REYN something Reynoso. That's good. Anna asked about knee problems. Knee problems, usually not a big deal. All right. You get the correct shoes and you get the protocol run. Knee problems disappear. Tons. However, if you've got a lot of if you've got a lot of bone damage in there, you can get bone damage in your knees beyond the point where you can get it corrected by ABC. All right. But people with knee problems, usually it goes away pretty quickly as long as you get your sit, sleep, stand, and you're not re-injuring yourself. Also, shoes have a big deal. I can't tell you how many people, we take off their shoes, we run them through the ABC protocol, they walk around, they say, oh, my knee's great. I go, okay, put on your shoes. They put on their shoes, and within 10 steps, their knee hurts again. And it's because what the shoes are doing. And there's actually medical research on this. There was, let's see, it was before I moved down here. So in the early 2010s, early 2010s, or maybe even before that, there were several articles that correlated knee problems with shoes. All right, and what they do. So we have a sit, sleep, stand booklet on what you should do to your shoes to get that right, and that usually hands that. All right. For people who have no noticeable problems, is preventive care a good idea? The answer is yes. And the reason the answer is yes is because your practitioner is only going to treat, if they're doing ABC correctly, is only going to treat the bones out of place that the body can't self-correct because there's no muscles pulling in the direction needed, and your body's going to pop up. All right. You might actually find that you did have problems you didn't know about, and you're in a what they call a pathological balance. All right, where the things are out of place and causing problems, but they're in such a balance that you don't notice it. All right, we've got plenty of those things that happen. And then people get symptomatic and they complain to the practitioner, and the ones that leave, it's a mistake, but the ones that stay find they straighten out and they're better than they've ever been. And that happens in all the time. All right. Donna asks, I have no pressing spinal issues other than stiffness. Stiffness is a pressing problem. All right. Would it be sensible to have preventative visits? The answer is, again, if you go, all right, you'll find out that you will improve immediately. How much you want to improve, how much you want to, you know, I have people who don't have much going on, all right? They think, who come in and we treat them 2, 6, 8, 10 times, and they're gone. They're just fine, all right? We have people who come in and they find out, oh my God, you know, one woman came in, she said, I don't really have any problems or anything like that. She was in her late 60s. And I treated her the first time and she just stood there and went, how come I can breathe so much better? And I said, well, I explained, you know, the bones go out of place. And she goes, oh my God. And why is my face turning red? And she's looking in the mirror. Why is my face turning red? I said, well, you know, in your chest, you've got your heart. And your heart's in there pumping. And it's pumping just fine. But with your chest collapsed on it, you know, if your shoulders are forward and your chest is down, with your chest collapsed on it, it can't open up. So I treat you, your body pops up, you see how your shoulders are back? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, your heart can now open and pump. And so, you know, it was pumping fine before, but it couldn't open. So now it's open. You know, people don't realize your heart opens by elastic. It compresses by muscle power, but it opens by elastic. So if your chest is, you know, if you're collapsed and your chest is compressed, you can't open up. And, you know, there's a definition of mathematics. You know, I do all this engineering stuff. There's a definition of mathematics, which is putting numbers to things so that you can see relationships that you would not otherwise see. That's a definition of mathematics. And so if you think about your heart pumping, all right, so an ounce of water is not too much, right? What is it, about 2.5 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, 2.5, 3 tablespoons, something like that. And so if your heart can pump, you know, if we straighten you out and your heart can pump 1 ounce more blood per beat, all right? So, you know, your average is what, 72 beats per minute? So 72 beats per minute is 144 ounces every 2 minutes. Well, if you look it up, you'll find out the average person has somewhere around 5 quarts of blood, right? 32 ounces to a quart, 5 quarts, 160 ounces. So if your heart can open up and pump 1 ounce more blood per beat in about 2.5 minutes, your entire blood circulation, your entire blood volume circulates 1 extra time, and you can breathe that much better. So you're getting that much more oxygen into your system. All right. We have people who, you know, they go for these deep breathing exercises and then they start getting ABC and they find out they're now breathing on a normal basis more than they were breathing with their deep breathing exercises before they got ABC and their body popped up straight. All right. So, you know, that's, you have more problems than you're thinking of. If you're talking about, I have no spinal issues other than stiffness, that's a significant problem at 76 years old. And, you know, take a look, give it a shot. If you don't like it, don't go back. You know, nobody's holding a gun to your head that you have to go. Lisa asks, any pearls of wisdom for a hard kyphosis like Scheuermann's disease? Yeah, you treat these people, you know, Scheuermann's disease is the bones of the spine are compressed, all right? And they say it's congenital, but I've had actually gymnasts who, for some reason, this kid had, you know, I said it was coming from the gym thing. And they said, no, it's a congenital thing. It comes from birth. And I said, this is a little focused. I don't think so. And it turns out this kid had something they took x-rays for at birth, and they saw the vertebrae were perfectly normal shaped at birth. And now she was 12 years old and she had Scheuermann's, and it was probably from her gymnastics coming forward. But we treated her and she popped up. She popped up just fine, and she looks pretty straight, not as straight as people without that. But her issue now is if she bends forward and everything else like that, it's easy to drag her body forward. And so her dad learned ABC, he treats her, and, you know, I see her maybe 2 or 3 times a year, because they just want me to check. But her dad's doing fine. And actually, you know what? I don't think I don't think I've actually seen her this year. So she must be doing fine. All right. So it takes a while. It took about 3 or 4 years of treatment for her to pop up and be stable, but just keep going. You know, and people are like 3 or 4 years. Well, you got a lifetime of being like this. 3 or 4 years is not too long. And so that's the way it goes. All right. I hope that answers that. Then let's see, hang on. What about a bad case of reactions from bad unwinding? All right. Nobody has a bad case of unwinding. People talk about this, but it really isn't that. What happens is people do things sitting, sleeping, standing that make it worse and more symptomatic. All right. Otherwise, usually not that bad. Usually, you know, every time somebody has a severe unwinding, all right, when they're around me, I show up, we get their sit, sleep, stand worked out, and all of a sudden they don't feel anywhere near as much. All right. You know, at ABC seminars where I'm teaching, I said, everybody, I want you to repeat after me. And we say, I hate sitting, sleeping, standing problems. Because, you know, chairs, beds, and shoes are made for people who are over and all twisted up. Right. And as soon as you start getting ABC and your body starts popping up, chairs, beds, and shoes are going to try and force your body back in this position. And let me tell you, somebody who is like this, who gets treated with ABC and is like this, and then a chair or a bed or something makes them go like this, they come in screaming that they're worse than they've ever been in their life, because they're used to having nothing and now their body bothers them. But they get treated and it goes away fairly quickly. All right. It's not a big deal. All right. ABC stands for Advanced Biostructural Correction. So advanced is advanced. There's an advance. Biostructure, life structure, which is body. We could call it advanced body correction too. All right. You know, and C is correction. So that's what that is, Linda. All right. If people learn the technique, can they treat themselves? Ken answers nope, and Ken is right. You can't treat, you can do the first rib maneuver on yourself. Okay, that you can do. You can learn that. If you go on the website, we teach you that for free. You can do that on yourself, but even that, you could teach somebody else to do that in 5 minutes better than you could do it on yourself, because you just don't have the leverage. You know, if the problem is bones out of place in a direction your body can't self-correct, I can't treat me. I have to get somebody else to treat me. Think about how frustrating that is. I know exactly what needs to be done. I can't do it. All right. You know, that's the way it goes. All right. For people who have no noticeable problems, is preventive care a good idea? Huge pandorsal box. Yeah, noticeable problems. Well, that's another story. And Ken answered that just fine there. What if we all sat on the floor like Japanese instead of in chairs? Well, you'd have even more problems, because your butts, you know, at that point, your knees are higher than your butt most of the time when you're sitting on the floor. That forces your pelvis into the opposite direction, and it's not good. All these are good. Look, a flat chair will do great. All right. They've actually made me design ABC furniture. And you would be astonished at how much people love this furniture. And it's a chair that's a little angled forward. If you go on the website, there's a store there, and we have an ABC chair for the office that just works fantastically. Otherwise, we have wedges you can put in the chair to get them straightened out. I don't know what else I can talk about, Dr. Sue. People can go to the website, abcmiracles.com, and learn this themselves. They can go to abcmiracles.com, and there's a practitioner locator on there. You can locate a practitioner near you. But there finally is a real answer that consistently,
Yeah.
that's the big deal. It consistently and predictably corrects bodies.
Jesse, I'd like to chime in.
Yes, go ahead, Harry.
So, you mentioned this briefly, but I wanted to talk about it, and that is the discovery of what is called tethered cord syndrome. And this is a discovery made by in the field of medical neurology. And what they discovered was over a lifetime, we form these adhesions inside the spinal cord. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because when using ABC taught by you on how to release these adhesions inside the spinal cord, it completely changed my body and my life. Meaning, it explained to me finally after all these years as a chiropractor, and I knew something was not getting fixed. Obviously, bones going out of place that the body could not self-correct were not getting corrected, by any chiropractic technique up until ABC. But the other thing, and the other major thing about ABC, is the discovery of how these adhesions in the spinal cord are released. And unbeknownst to us, and it was an unknown thing in chiropractic or anywhere else, that our bodies are developing these adhesions inside the spinal cord, and that is the reason why bones couldn't get corrected. That's the reason why bodies started crunching forward. That's the reason why so many problems we were having. And ABC discovered how to actually release these adhesions, and we do it with these, it's properly diagnosed when and where to do these. They're stretched in a certain way, and it's a big stretch, and you hear this big, deep crunch, not like a regular manipulation of chiropractic or anywhere else, but this deep release, and the body pops up and your head clears up, and it's almost like a Disney movie, where the sun comes out and the birds start singing. But I wanted to highlight that because that's such a breakthrough in the treatment of the human spine and structure, and it has given so many patients consistent relief, myself included, and it's just changed so many lives.
Well, I can talk a lot, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's about all I could say is, yeah, it's once you pull these things apart, all right. Hang on, there's a guy here, Brad West, wants to review kyphosis treatment again briefly. All right. Well, Dr. Sue's very familiar with that because she was all bent over and popped up. And so what happens is, first of all, if you, let's see, let's see, that got knocked off here. So people who have a kyphosis, now there's two basic things with kyphosis. One is people who are just stuck forward, and two is people who have compression fractures, and that drags that forward. All right, so that there's two issues there, but either one works out to be about the same thing. Now, if you look, let's see, I have an animation here. If you look at your typical manipulation, whether it's by chiropractors or other people, so what they do is they lay you down on your belly and then they push down on your back. Now that actually creates anteriors. That's the one direction your body can't self-correct. All right. And so it creates it, and it doesn't actually, that's actually not really accurate. That's a demonstration. What typically happens, the theory is you have this anterior here, and the theory is you're going to push this one forward and line up under that. But if you actually do the measurements and do the physical tests, what happens is you do that and you end up with multiple anteriors. You end up with 2 or 3 of them there. All right. So what happens, and this is for can with the scoliosis. What happens is a vertebra goes forward, okay? And all those people who say vertebra can't go forward, it's silly, right? Anyway, so vertebra goes forward, you collapse forward, and you don't want to stand there like this, so you lean backward, all right? And so what a kyphosis is made of is a whole bunch of forward vertebrae and a person leaning backward to compensate, right? People make a mistake of thinking that a kyphosis is a backward curve in the spine. A kyphosis is a forward curve in the spine with the person leaning backward like this so they don't fall on their face. So all you have to do is the same, you run the ABC protocol, and usually what Harry was talking about with the adhesions, you have to learn how to do the meningeal adhesion. Excuse me, you have to learn how to do the meningeal adhesions correctly, because by the time the spine is that far forward and they're in a big kyphosis, they've got a lot of adhesions in there. And if you want to, I've had people say, oh, there's no such thing as meningeal adhesions. We go on the internet and we check them. If you want to go on the internet and check them, the medical people call it perineural adhesions, right? Peri means around and neural is the nerves. So, they talk about adhesions within the spinal canal, all right? And it involves the meninges and other tissues. So they call them perineural adhesions. And if you look up perineural adhesions, you'll see tons of them. There's a book by a chiropractor, Bill Ruck, who's actually local to Harry. He teaches at one of the chiropractic schools up in Northern California there, RUCK, and he wrote a book, Common Subluxations of the Spinal Column or something, Common Subluxations of the Spine or something. And in there, there's a whole, he does dissections of human bodies. And they're not even preserved cadavers. I think they might even be fresh cadavers that he did the dissections on. And you can see the meningeal adhesions. There's tons of pictures of them. While I would like to give you a more detailed review of treating scoliosis, Dr. West, all you have to do is correct the anteriors and the body pops up. You just run the ABC protocol. It's really nothing so special that you can't do it immediately. Anybody can go on meningealrelease.com. It's in the chat thing. You could learn the first rib maneuver. You could do it on people. Immediately their shoulders will pop back and their body will pop up. How much each person pops up is going to be dependent upon what their main problems are, but they will all pop up and do that well. Are there stretching exercises you can do to prevent scoliosis? No. All right. Keep in mind the problem is bones out of place in the direction your body has no muscles that can pull in the direction needed to fix them. So there's no corrective exercise, period. All right. All these people say, oh, you can do all these corrective exercises. It doesn't happen. There's this guy, Dennis Wogan, who came to one of my seminars and he created the Clear Institute for Scoliosis Treatment. And they've changed their protocol about 10 times over the past 15 years. And the reason they keep changing their protocol is because nothing works. They talk about doing muscles and this and that. None of that stuff works because it's bones out of place in a direction the body can't self-correct because there's no muscle pulling in the direction needed. And so there's never going to be any exercises that are corrective. Okay. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't exercise and be strong, because the stronger you are, the better you can compensate for what you have there. All right. Unless you have something else, I don't really know that there's anything else to talk about. I've said the basic concepts, and talking doesn't fix anything. You have to go learn how to do it and do it, or get it done on you, and you'll be very pleasantly surprised that all these things I say actually do happen. You know how on when they do these diet pictures and they do all this and they have the fine print says results not typical. Well, in ABC, we should have a thing that says these results are typical in big letters. They are typical with big exclamation points. because I don't have anybody who has before and after pictures who's done ABC even close to correctly and doesn't have a whole bunch of people popped up. Dr. Sue, do you have anything else for me?
Well, do you know any practitioners in Marin?
Yes,
Actually-
there is somebody in Marin. Who is that?
The
You'll have
best
to
thing-
look at the website, managerrelease.com.
That's
I do want to make a comment about that, if I may, is that the practitioners you see on that website and they're certified, that's really important, because if you want to go to a practitioner, whether they're professional or not, to be on that list, they have to go through pretty, number one, rigorous training, but number two, they have to continue their education, because ultimately, you know, you can only learn so much from a seminar, and then you go practice it, and then you come back and then you get corrected, and you go back and you go back and forth. Practitioners who continue their education in ABC continue to be extremely proficient. If you're on that list based on, you know, the levels of competence on that list, that's quite a qualification. And practitioners who take one or two seminars and then they kind of drop off, invariably they end up altering ABC and they just don't get those same kind of results. So I've encouraged to find a practitioner who does ABC, go to meningeorelease.com and look them up. Now, I'm doing my best. The biggest complaint I have from my patients who come to see me is that when they move, there's no ABC practitioners in the area, because once you get ABC care and you see what it does for your body, and then you go get some other physical therapy or chiropractic care, it's usually typically very unsatisfactory, because they typically can feel the difference and they feel worse. So I'd say go to that website, meningeorelease.com, look up a practitioner, and I am doing my best to train more practitioners to get them out in all different locations, and it's happening. The doctors and people, I have like 3 or 4 patients now who have learned ABC, gone home to different countries, treated their family, and just are amazed at the results. So literally anybody could learn ABC, and I'm even teaching our patients to do parts of ABC, and never in my history of 40 years of practice would I ever dream of teaching patients how to adjust. But ABC is so safe to do, and there's certain things that anybody can learn, maybe not the whole thing, but little bits and pieces. At least give your friends and family some relief, because I think a lot of people are, you know, suffering to a degree. So that's our the momentum we're creating to create a movement to reduce suffering in this country.
Yep.
So what might ET do? I mean, you know, a quick visit, I don't know, might help a little, but not permanently.
Well, the best thing that I think that person can do is go to the website, learn the first rib maneuver, and have a friend or family member learn that maneuver, and just do that. It's right on the website. The other thing is that they can take the course. Jesse has a course, I think, My Brand New Body or something like that. He mentioned that.
Yep.
But it's a course for lay people to learn ABC. And that, to me, is, wow, how cool is that?
Well,
You're taking health into your own hands.
as I said, I can talk a lot. ET, if I were you, I would find a friend who's willing to push around bodies, learn the course with them, and trade. All right, but the best thing to do is learn it with a friend and treat each other.
Well, maybe ET can become a practitioner, and just think of all the business he will have. Are there issues with licenses if he practices this in Oregon?
The only issue is you start a private member association, and then you don't need licensing or anything like that.
So ET, maybe you need to get some buddies and start a practice. You might have a lot of business.
Oh, well, the typical thing that happens is somebody, we have a lot of Amish practitioners, and keep in mind, Amish people, you know, it's a restrictive religion, and they only have an 8th grade education. And they learn ABC and they do absolutely fine. All right. They start practices and they treat people and they do fantastically. So if they can do it, you can do it. But what typically happens is, hang on, somebody wants the website here.
I want a brand new body today.com or meningealrelease.com, both of which I put into the notes.